Most people only learn the importance of debating too late in their lives. Once they are in the professional world and have to deal with toxic people, or when they have realized that they married the wrong person and have trouble communicating with such a person. And in this video, I don't pretend that the techniques I will explain to you are the best from an academic standpoint, and actually academic things are quite often super theoretical. Those are simply the ones that were the most useful for me in my personal life and professional life whenever I had to deal with confrontational people or when I had to solve an important conversation, an important conflict. How did I lead that person to see things my way before judging me or before saying that anything I say is full of shit anyway? The first one is called in Rhetoric chunking up, that we will simply explain as generalizing to a superior, broader category. Something bigger than the single example that person is giving to you. For instance, if the person says, oh, you should get a degree because with a degree you get much more career opportunities. Something I heard my whole childhood. It turned out it was not the case, but long story short, when the person says that, you could try to give counterexamples, say, no, I'm different. But when the person has established that frame, that might be difficult to make them hear your argument. What you need to do first with that inference, so a cause and an effect, they have built up that logical link in their mind. You first need to untie the link, maybe not break, but at least confuse or damage slightly the link they have made before they can just hear what you have to say without judging. Therefore, in that regard, I will go into an alternative view here, basically bringing the attention to a broader category here. So every person, generalizing, every person on earth who has ever gotten a degree got super successful by your standards. Are we even talking about financial standards, recognition standards, fame? What do you call opportunity? What does that mean in your lingo? I don't even understand that term right now. So, does everyone on earth obey the rule you're trying to make me fall into? Yes or no? If it is not the case, then first of all, why should I listen to you? And let's say I still do because I respect you, of course. In that case, you're going to have to justify how can that be true? Because I don't see that as being valid for every human on earth. Why should it be valid for me then? And by the way, you can find all the explanations for how to use that model in a debate or in any kind of difficult conversation with a chapter down below coming from my book on the topic, Magical Linguistics. You have a chapter on debating, and that chapter has been given for free for a limited time only. You will see everything about rhetoric, about how to change somebody's perspective, change their mind whenever they make inferences against you or against your point. How can you contradict that, and how can you lead their mind away from the conflict if you want to do so? That is down below if you want to check that out. Then the second technique will be to break down pessimism, because quite often I had to deal with extremely pessimistic people, especially when you are a kind of bold and adventurous person. So many people try to convince you that your plans will not work. It is not possible, you won't be able to do this, better stop now before it is too late. But you may try to do something they have never done themselves, they have zero authority to judge if it is going to work or not, but they still try to give you advice. In that sense, I didn't really like it, so the way I challenged that specifically, if for example somebody was telling me, oh, the selection process for this kind of job is very hard, or let's say if you want to get into some type of business school, or if you want to get into the Navy, or whatever is difficult to get in, for example, and they would say, oh, don't hope too much for it because it is very difficult, you know. In those cases, usually they just project their own fears on you, their own lack of self-esteem, because they don't think they would be able to do so, so they prefer to keep you low where they feel comfortable instead of seeing you proving them wrong. So in that case, I like to challenge with a resulting outcome. As a result of your claim, what do you think I should do about it? Do you think I should just do nothing? Do you think I should just stay on my couch watching TV? Maybe like you, if you feel comfortable doing that. I'm not judging you, you do whatever you want with your life. But when it comes to my life, I'm not going to allow somebody who's not me to tell me what is the best option for me if I haven't even asked for your advice. So what do you think we should do about it? And if they have some idea, oh, you should just do this and that, or if it is a more general context, what should we do about planet Earth? What should we do about climate? And they say, oh, we should do this and this. Okay, and what have you made personally in that regard for climate change? What have you done personally? Because it is nice to give lessons to people, they should do this. What have you done? If you have done things, okay, then I will listen. If you have done nothing, again, what kind of authority are you again to tell me what should be done? I'm not sure I get the point right now. Challenging pessimism by pointing out to the future outcomes they are painting in their mind can be great to decrease that pessimism. When they realize that they have just projected some extremely dark moment in the future and nobody can control the future anyway, so somebody preaching that they know what's going to happen, nobody knows shit about the future anyway. The people who know about the future are the people who are building the future. It's not from me, by the way, it's a quote from Steve Jobs, I think, or somebody. But I never saw anyone as being a fortune teller. I don't believe anyone has absolute certainty on what might or might not happen in the future. Therefore, when somebody tries to predict my future, I challenge with, what do you suggest we should do about it? And whatever they say, I make them climb down. I make them break down. Okay, so I should just apply for different schools. If we come back to the main example here, I should just apply from these different schools. Okay, how many? How many specifically should I apply to? 3, 4, 10? How many? You must have an idea because you have been judging my opinion, so you must have a clear idea on what I should do instead of what I wanted to do from the beginning. Number 3, what I call pointing out to the lack of assertive language, or pointing out whenever they are using some non-assertive language. What I mean by that is something else you will find in the chapter down below on debating and debate tactics. This was initially a classification of the type of language you might be inclined more to use, depending on how certain are you about the topic you're talking about, or depending on how confrontational the person is with you. I would suggest when somebody is highly confrontational to use more nuanced language, eventually somewhat having a tendency to think that eventually, occasionally at times, then if you are kind of more in a rapport with the person, you can allow yourself some stronger language. Explain your opinion and judgments by using many times, I rarely do that, I hardly ever think it is a good idea, those things. And when you have absolute authority, you can just use strong language like always, never, completely, all the time. One big issue comes from people who use those strong adjectives and adverbs, always right, I'm always this one, but they don't really have experience in the thing they are talking about. And when somebody is using, even without realizing it, some of the less assertive ways of describing their position or opinion, I point that out. For example, to point that out, when I was in college, I was dating quite a lot, to be honest, and the curious thing is I was never lying to any of the girls I was dating. I was always clear with everyone from day one. I'm probably not going to be monogamous with you. I have no problem with monogamy by itself. I just think most people who engage into monogamy do it for the wrong reasons, or they don't really question themselves before engaging with a partner. Therefore, I prefer, as long as I don't know you quite well, which means at least 6 months in my lingo personally, then I don't engage in a monogamous relationship. I just explained that to everyone, and one rebuttal I was often getting was, well, almost nobody can date multiple partners, man or woman, without being a narcissist or somebody trying to manipulate. And I was constantly being judged like this, oh, you're just a manipulator. Then once they got to know me much better, they would always say, well, actually with you it is different because you're not like the others. And I know that about myself. But then I first had to challenge with, cool, what stops me from being part of them? Because if you have used the words almost nobody, that is not certainty, that is almost nobody. Cool, what stops me from, with my positive intention that I know to be right, and if you need more time to know me, perfect, I respect that, at least I know where I am coming from, my intention is positive, and if you say that almost nobody can, then that small portion you have enumerated in your sentence, what stops me from being part of that portion? Because if such people do exist, what prevents me from being part of them? Whenever people use those kinds of language, it is most people would agree with me. Cool, then what about the ones who don't agree with you? Then why should I trust you if you say most people? Most people means some people disagree with you. Who are they? How do you know they are not right and you're not wrong? By that maneuver, you can always cancel a lot of useless arguments from people who don't know anything about what they are arguing about. Number 4, identifying recurring personal biases. This one is more technical, I will acknowledge that. Coming from a therapeutic background, I had in therapy many people, so I'm more attuned to those little things. Maybe you're not, maybe you are, depends on you. Basically, the technique, in case you want to borrow that one too, it is whenever people appeal to examples, to justifications, to evidence, to claim that what they say is right and they know the truth, but all the examples they are using always revolve around the same exact situation, or they always have only one personal case in their personal life and nothing else. When that happens, for example, I had this discussion many times on feminism when some girls were telling me we are oppressed, and I'm not saying they are not. I'm challenging how specifically do you know that you yourself are oppressed, or if you have seen oppression, where have you seen it and how did you notice it? And in one such example, the girl I was talking to kept referring back to literally only situations in her personal life. It was never even about other women. She said, oh, everyone is oppressed, but she always referred only to herself, to what happened in her last job or in her life. And it was always revolving around some guy in the team or some guy where she goes is being an absolute douchebag, is being an asshole with her, and no one is moving to protect her. And I could smell from a mile away there was some daddy thing here, that her dad had been abusive with her. It was kind of really clear in my opinion. I did not say that out loud, but it was really clear to me. And I pointed out, therefore, with the meta frame, taking on a higher perspective on what they claim, saying, you know, literally every example you're giving me involves you, only you and no other girls around, only you being taken advantage of by only one specific man. It's not all the men out there, it's always one person you're referring to, while others around remain silent. Does that appeal to anything in your childhood? I simply asked this. Does that appeal to anything in your childhood, or even, I think I even said just in your life in general? And when I asked this, she started crying right away. And I did not try to be harsh with her about that. I simply said, well, if I just ask one simple question and you start crying, don't you think there is some personal issue here, much more than some big political fight that you're not even part of to the level you claim you are? And the last one, which might be a bit less elaborate, so I kept that one for the end because you might already know about this, it is basically asking for evidence, but more specifically, and as an evidence, asking for quantification, for specific numbers. Whenever somebody claims that, again, they know something you don't know because they have some superior experience or knowledge or authority over what you want to do, you may challenge by only specific data. Instead of saying, no, you're wrong, which never works, you ask them to clarify, okay, so how much or how many or who specifically, eventually, how much, how many. One time, long ago, I had somebody explaining that if I wanted to launch a business, which I have done at this point, if you were helping this other demographic, basically something that this guy had been part of and he was looking for help in that regard, he said, oh, you would make so much more money if you were focusing on those people. And the demographic he was talking about had nothing to do with what I wanted to do with my business, with the people I wanted to help, had nothing to do with my interest, but he kept trying to force on that. And after I said politely, I'm not interested in this one time, twice, 3 times, at some point the person still forcing, whereas I told you politely no, that's a big indication for me something is not solved in your case, and I could get quite confrontational in those cases. With this one, I was still quite polite. I simply asked for evidence with quantification. I said, by how much percentage specifically do you pretend I can grow my revenue in my business based on your claim, on the demographic you want me to target, whatever. I gave him exactly how much I was making on average per month. And I said, okay, this is my income. By how much specifically do you pretend I can increase that income by following your advice? And the guy just said, oh, well, I don't know, I'm not in your business. And I said, well, if you don't know, then you have absolutely no legitimate right to tell me what I should do. That put a blank in the conversation. He remained silent for a few minutes, and I had some peace of mind. When people try to judge something they don't understand or fully comprehend, it is your duty and your obligation sometimes to show where the boundaries are. So those were my 5 best tactics to handle debating whenever I had to debate people on difficult topics. Sometimes it was light and fun, sometimes it was quite confrontational. And again, if you want to figure out the whole methodology and how to pick better arguments whenever you debate somebody, you have a chapter down below coming from my book Magical Linguistics, where you will find some of the best ways to use that model and how to prepare whenever you want to enter a debate. You're not really sure of what should be the best thing to say, or how to not lose the face, how to not let yourself be controlled by your emotions because somebody has read some tweet or social media post that got them infuriated and now they want to make you believe something you don't want to believe in. Then how can you cancel that ideology, whatever it is, and how can you remain polite while controlling the frame no matter who is in front of you. That chapter is down below if you want to check it out. Be my guest as long as it is still available. It is part of a book, so it might not stay available for free forever. Take it while you can, and see you soon in the next video. Thank you.